make those picks and just force their opponents to have to switch things up. But I don't really see too many holes in their draft. It's the only way to really beat Immortals is to actually outplay them once you're in game.
All right, we'll see how they're going to be able to take it to him. It's going to be a Baron as the first banned Dragonborn. Where do you anticipate the draft going from here?
Well, Grace Band coming out, that's smart. We talked about how Grumpjaw can be very dangerous on A-side first pick, just because now the teams have become more accustomed to that pick. There's a lot of counters that can come out. So I actually think NRG will not pick the Grumpjaw. Lyra pick comes in here. It's a very safe pick.
Yeah, Lyra, like, always going to be a safe first pick, right? It's just a very comfortable one. Vox is going to beat the lock-in and then Idris banned away. They're rattling through this draft, not messing around here.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's also just not many surprises. This is exactly what you expect from these two teams in this early portion of the draft. This is where things start to get interesting. The second ban of the second phase is really where you can start to try and shake things up a little bit. There's a lot of options here for NRG. Likely going to be wanting to take away something for him from T-Tigers. Obviously, you can't ban him out completely because the hero pools are just too deep, but maybe take the Koshko off the board. Exactly. And it's just so good to take that away, make sure that T-Tigers can't get that early game control.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by that ban. I mean, if you've been watching Immortals, they prefer KESTREL or even maybe Samuel in this case. Koshko, these higher skill teams, they're really good at countering the Koshko more so than the lower tiers. So I'm a little surprised that I feel like NRG maybe just doesn't want to have to deal with that specific composition. They're on A side. They can actually take the Samuel here or the KESTREL if they choose. And honestly, you really want to get Lightning T on a hyper carry. This would be very important.
Yeah, having the hyper carries come out for both. I mean, Juan and Lightning T are both very strong with the hyper carries.
There's an argument for Samuel and KESTREL. We've seen Juan Hernandez take KESTREL weapon power in the lane multiple times. In fact, I would argue that's one of his most successful heroes himself. So there's a lot of denial available. But as you said before, the hero pools of Immortals are very deep.
Yeah, and Immortals pick Catherine here just for that very scenario because they want to make sure that if the KESTREL comes out, or even the Samuel, it's a lot of poke, they're able to at least have a support that can reflect some of that damage. I'm curious to see if NRG will then think about not going KESTREL here and do something a little bit more creative here in the lane because of that Catherine.
The difficulty with doing that, though, is you then leave that KESTREL open for T-Tigers to pick up, and you're not really going to have a whole lot that can try and counter it. Obviously, the Samuel may look to do so just with the extra range, that range battle. But it is going to be the KESTREL picked up here. So KESTREL into the Catherine is usually something pretty strong. But again, this is taking away a lot of heroes from T-Tigers. Still has options. Can still run the Glaive, although we don't typically see that out of the jungle anymore. Could go for the Baptiste. And so that is going to be the option.
All right, so the Baptiste going into the jungle versus the Samuel. And then KESTREL going weapon power in the lane up against that Vox. So how are we feeling about these compositions? It definitely doesn't feel like either team has a ridiculous advantage coming in, which is something we saw a lot over in Europe.
Each team has an advantage in their own ways in different aspects. Obviously, big range advantage for the side of NRG. They're going to have a huge range advantage, but there's a lot more burst and team fight potential, I think, from the composition that Immortals have, and that's something that they're definitely going to be looking to abuse as long as they can avoid getting poked and harassed by the members of NRG. When they go in, they're going to be able to find kills quickly.
So very much, stylistically, very different teams from these two squads then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Immortals played a more cautionary draft at first, kind of allowed to see the hand of NRG. They knew the Samuel or KESTREL could come out, or both. So that Catherine pick was a way to kind of cement them as being ready to counter. And then, of course, Baptiste. This is something we've only seen T-Tigers on a few times, and he's solid. He's able to perform, and I think that this is something that maybe they've been holding close to vest. Obviously, getting into the Vainglory8 is very critical, and they tried not to reveal too many strats as they made that run.
All right, well, we'll see if they can make a run all the way into the Vainglory8 right now. It's Immortals up against NRG, two North American powerhouses. Let us know on Twitter who you're going to be supporting going on into this first match of the day. Hashtag Vainglory8. But it's time to head onto the Halcyon Fold for Immortals up against NRG.
Thank you very much, guys. On the desk, my name is George, joined by AJ. Here we are, AJ. NRG versus Immortals, their fight to stay in the VG8, or can it be Immortals coming through with the win to secure themselves a VG8 spot?
Yeah, it's a critical matchup for both of these teams, and with the new format that we are using for this season, every single matchup matters. We're going to see every single challenger team played by every single Vainglory8 team. This is only the first hurdle, if you're looking at it from the side of Immortals. But if you're NRG, this is the first chance to really make a statement and say, hey, we're meant to be here. Looking more at the game we have at hand, though, this should be a pretty interesting one. Like we heard at the desk, the compositions are pretty different from both of these teams. And one thing that means is that when we see a team force an issue, the response really matters so much more because you've got to deal with it just right. You're not trying to fight in the same situations as your opponents. Right now, NRG trying to go for some aggression here. It's quite interesting, seeing as I believe T-Tigers did actually get that camp.
Yeah, he got it all for himself. Griffin Dark over the wall, though. DNZ going really low. The Sigil snipe comes out from Bradley. And that'll be first blood to NRG. They're already coming out the gate. They're coming out the gate fast.
Yeah, and they're making a real statement here. I think a lot of people, even though NRG are the team currently sitting in the Vainglory8, might make the assertion that Immortals are favorites here. Just based on the fact that they've got star-studded talent like Dienzio and T-Tigers, that they've been performing so dominantly for a while now. Also, Dienzio's been looking more on form than he has in the past. That's kind of critical as well, because he's definitely a player that has his ups and downs. But NRG coming in here right off the bat, making a play happen. This is something you can do with KESTREL Samuel Lyra. Samuel Lyra has inherently good strength in the jungle as a pair, but then if you add KESTREL to the mix, they have a lot of burst damage that can come out of nowhere and can hit you from pretty far away. So if you're trying to move to safety and you're not taking the right route, or if you're being a bit greedy and you're going through the lane instead of maybe back behind your turret, something like that can happen. Immortals needs to be very careful about their pathing in this game.
And they do. Well, let's touch on these compositions a little bit more as the fight does break out with T-Tigers. Arguably one of the strongest junglers at the moment. Just taking a few pot shots from Lightning T. Lightning T going fairly low there. The Sigil will hit them up, but the stun comes through from Catherine. Lightning T in a lot of trouble. T-Tigers finds himself a kill. And now Max Green chasing Bradley. Bradley does make it out alive. Juan Hernandez is now pushed back in this lane. Ordain comes down. Active camo there. Bad Mojo does get stunned up, but Bradley's going to be there with the heals.
Yeah, that was really interesting, actually. Samuel and Baptiste, sure, they can poke back and forth against each other. That's all fine. But the moment you actually commit to a proper fight, Baptiste is going to win that in the early game.
100%. Ordain is such a devastating ability if you can get it off on a KESTREL. She relies on that mobility and being able to stay in active camo, but if you manage to tag her just beforehand, it can be very hard for her to get out of the way, and it's very easy to flare her up as well. Now NRG, 3-man strong in that lane now. They are just going to push in. You got to say, T-Tigers especially, he's got to be the one to kind of watch out for, because he is pegged as one of the top junglers right now in the scene. And Immortals, not a name we kind of think of in the challenge battles, coming up against NRG. We could have seen this match a couple of splits ago. It's always so interesting seeing these teams play each other once again.
For sure, and I mentioned kind of the storyline of Dienzio being that he has ups and downs, right? But T-Tigers is a player who has pretty much always seemed to perform very, very well. It was a big surprise, I think, to a lot of people when he decided to move from the top-tier team actually to a challenger team, at the beginning of the split. But he seems to have found a good home. Here comes a fight. You can see a lot of damage right off the bat there down onto the captains.
Yeah, that combination of CC coming out from Immortals is pretty strong. You got the Ordained, and just leaves Catherine a nice easy time to run up to someone with that merciless pursuit and tag someone else. So there's a lot of follow-up CC, and then Dienzio is kind of free on the backline to just kind of hit whoever he wants. So we'll see if that does come into effect later on as well. We are hitting that mark at that point in the game. We are 4 minutes in. Lightning T starting to get his items online. I can imagine that's going to be a Frostburn first. But, Immortals, they're doing exactly the same thing. Dienzio started off with a Poison Shiv.
Yeah, I like the Poison Shiv a lot here. Great against Lyra, great against Samuel.
Juan Hernandez, a lot of trouble here, but they're actually trading this back quite heavily. Bright Ball does come out from NRG, so they're going to just back off. But Immortals, once again, just layering that CC is also important to their composition.
Yeah, layering CCs is a huge thing whenever you have the ability to do it, just because it shuts someone down for so much longer than really is even fair, right? Like, you balance the duration of a stun as a game designer around what's fair, and then if you get stunned like 3 times in a row, you're like, hold on a second, I'm pretty sure this wasn't wasn't on the cards. But yeah, very, very nice stuff there. I like the back and forth between these two teams. Neither one wants to give up their position here. Every game, as I said earlier, matters. Immortals, NRG, they both want to build momentum, as they are going to have to play against a ton more teams over the course of this weekend, playing a ton more matches. Talking about itemization, though, as you were doing a second ago here, yeah, the Poison Shiv, great. You know, Samuel, Lyra, they both have huge amounts of sustain. Samuel's is even more noticeable in the early game. Like, when he goes up and uses Corrupted Genius on someone in the early game, you can really see how much sustain it actually gives him. So I like the decision to go for that early on here. I also like that Lightning T went for the Frostburn. Batiste has kind of an awkward area of effect. Like, area of effect's a wrong term. Area of influence, right? His range when it comes to the bad mojo is not the hugest. It's pretty long. But then when he's empowered, he kind of wants to be basic attacking you too. And if you slow him up and he can't get you, he doesn't have mobility. So this actually is a pick that really can shut down some of the damage even coming in from Immortals.
It looks like Immortals want to go. Every single second here, they know they're at a disadvantage when Bradley's around. They look like they just want to try and force the Bright Bulwark right now. There's bad mojos coming out. They're starting to hurt. There's the Drifting Dart. There's the so many stuns on Juan Hernandez. Ends up falling. Oblivion does end up going missing. Immortals' health bars are blinking. They are having to back off rather sharpish as Lightning T. He's got the damage. He's got the sustain. But that massive kill on Juan. We literally just talked about it, AJ. It was like, wow, look at that layering of CC. Bam. One's dead.
Absolutely. I'm actually a little surprised Lightning T didn't chase. He certainly had a lot of damage under his belt if he wanted to. But now with that pickup, this is a big opportunity for the side of Immortals. Dienzio's got a tension bow on top of the Poison Shiv. This is a build we've talked about plenty in the past. It spikes really, really hard right now. You can do so much damage. You can stay in fights for a decent amount of time due to your sustain. NRG needs to be careful over the next couple of minutes. They really do. I think it's going to be big when the Lyra hits 6. You want to have that portal both to snappily engage onto someone like Batiste or Dienzio, but you also need to be able to get out of these situations that have been so punishing. Because Immortals, you know, if Catherine goes in and finds the stun, you're in a really bad spot. You need to just react and get out of there as quickly as possible. Catherine, of course, a great pick into Lyra, we used to see so much, because of the fact that the Bright Bulwark does not shut her down in the same way. NRG, they've got plenty of ways to play around what Immortals is bringing to the table, but they need to make sure they're utilizing those. Oh boy, Juan!
Oh, hang on a minute. Juan is gonna get annihilated. Just absolutely liquidating under Immortals' pressure. My goodness, that wasn't even fair at this point. You're talking about fair game design, AJ. That doesn't seem fair at all. Immortals are just going to siege up this turret. However, they are taking a fair bit of damage from Lightning T. Tigers, in fact, one of the main predecessors of that damage. Nice finish from Shade. That's going to be a big block on the ultimate there from Catherine. One shot, one kill. It's going to strike something or other. Didn't even know if that even hit Tigers, but Immortals, they take one out and they get a lot of damage done with that first tier turret.
That was a really nice pick by Immortals. I love the fact that they're rotating together and utilizing what their comp is strong at, which in a lot of cases is the chain crowd control like you were mentioning. NRG, though, they need to be a bit more present and need to make sure they have good vision to allow for them to play around these kinds of plays. You know they're going to happen. You know that Immortals wants to pick you up a little bit earlier on into the game, that they have the potential to, so you've got to account for that in the way that you are playing. On top of that, you know, we're starting to see just how insane it can be when you chain two silences together. They can't do anything during the silence, and then you follow up with a Fearsome Shade. That is just, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous how strong that is. It's not just, you know, you can have plenty of chained crowd control situations with just stuns, but this one shuts you down in more ways than a lot of those do. It's a very nice composition from Immortals.
Yeah, I was literally about to mention that, AJ. The silences are going to be massive. Wait for it, blast trap. As soon as those ripple out, T-Tigers, free damage, free ordains. And then you've got to think about Bradley. His main disengage tool is that Bright Bulwark. Hasn't got that available to him. Immortals maybe looking for a little something here, but again, they're just going to back off. Lightning T, by the way, is level 10. Highest in the game right now. Ordained does go down, but NRG are more than safe under their turrets. And Minion Candy actually being popped from Bradley here. Really early prioritization in getting his minions up there, up to Immortals turret.
Yeah, I like the fact that NRG is pushing a lot here. This is something their comp does quite nicely. so long as they are really on the mark when it comes to things like a Crucible for a disengage. They have the ability to just push quite safely. They have a lot of bailout tools like the Arcane Passage, the Bright Bulwark. They have good range. Immortals are the one who have the onus on them to start a fight in that situation. Plus, although we might see that fight here.
There's the Vision Shade, there's the Blast Drummers, there's the other silence. That massive bad mojo will take out 2 members. NRG looking scattered to the 4 winds at the moment. Juan Hernandez, Lightning T, didn't stand a chance. The go button was pressed, AJ, and Immortals find 2 kills.
Where was the Arcane Passage, right? I mean, this was the situation that we needed to see NRG react appropriately to, and honestly, it was pretty telegraphed. Catherine doesn't just blink on top of you. She needs to run at you before she can stun you. She needs to wind up a pretty long animation silence to do that. If you go for wait for it, you see the silence a while before it comes in. You need to know that in that moment, if any of the crowd control hits you, you're going to be chained and taken down. NRG had kind of a slow reaction to what happened there. As a result, they lose 2 people, even though they nearly killed Dienzio. They did like 90% of Dienzio's health in the first second or 2 seconds of that fight, but they were crowd controlled for the rest of the fight. They couldn't do that remaining 10% at any point. Immortals have a huge lead off the back of that. Here comes another fight, though.
Well, they want to go for it again. Ordain is going to come out. Fearsome Shade's going to get blocked. Bad Mojo onto 3 members of NRG, and already Lightning T is going to fall. Now, Immortals maybe looking for a little something else here. Dienzio, the wait for is going to silence up too. Bradley has nowhere to go. He falls down. That's a double kill now to T-Tigers. Juan Hernandez, the last member alive for NRG, is going to have to back off, or in fact, actually, Dienzio is going to find him and straight up kill him. Ace for Immortals, and my goodness, NRG just crumbling.
This is a team composition that's pretty fragile to falling behind as well. If you're NRG and you fall this far behind, what are your options for coming back? Well, you're not really going to be able to pick someone unless they are massively out of position, because you don't have a good amount of crowd control that doesn't require a ton of setup to actually land. Your best bet is Portal, Bright Bulwark, and maybe I do enough damage, but that's, Kestrel and Samuel, they are heroes who do tons of damage over the course of a longer fight. So when you're behind, one of the most common ways that a team will come back is they will find a pick, and they will translate that into an objective they ordinarily would not be able to contest or go for. But they don't have the tools for that. So what they need to do is really focus on kiting, focus on getting some vision down, knowing the angle at which their opponents are coming from, and getting into a position where, like, Drifting Dark has full effectiveness, right? That kind of situation, like right here.
Max Dream wants to go in again. Hang on, Ordained onto Bradley. He's caught in the middle of 3 members. Fearsome Shade's going to ripple through. T-Tigers takes 1 kill. Look at Dienzio now. Does dodge the Oblivion just slightly. Juan Hernandez will take another trip back to base. Dienzio's going to chase down Lightning T. And NRG's composition, it may be full of kiting potential, but they just can't kite quick enough. Immortals still ganging up, still trying to kill Lightning T. They're just going to surround him now. Dienzio going very low, but Immortals find yet another ace. That Crystal Sentry was nowhere to be found. We're 11-1, 13 minutes in, and it's looking all south now for NRG.
2 things could have changed the outcome of that last fight. It was very well played by Immortals. I love the fact that they actually staggered their CC instead of just straight up chaining, because that time Bradley actually did have a decent Crucible, at least, assuming that all of it was going to come out at the same time. But we need to see Juan have his own reflect block. Like, what are those 2 potions doing in his inventory right now? Sure, maybe he just picked them up because he had a couple, 50 gold or whatever, but that is not good enough at this point in the game. You need to have your own reflex block. There's too much crowd control. When it came down to it, and we had the situation where NRG could have come back, right? Juan and Lightning T kiting into a choke point situation, Dienzio isolated. That is the recipe for a comeback. But if you don't have a reflex block, if you can't survive the situation, if you can't sort of play with the right positioning because you have access to that bailout item, it's not going to work for you. Lightning T nearly made it happen by himself. If he had actually aimed the right way when they were diving under the turret, he easily could have killed Dienzio. He easily could have even got a 2nd kill. But he only got 1 Malice and Verdict off during the Drifting Dark. So a couple of mistakes there, really punishing NRG. They've got a few opportunities to come back into the game so far, but they haven't necessarily been utilizing them to the fullest potential. And meanwhile, Immortals, they're adapting. their play style to what NRG has to offer. They're staggering their crowd control. They're playing this just right.
Playing this absolutely perfectly to a T. Gold miner was taken earlier, so Immortals have got a lot of money in the bank. But that Kraken is going down very quickly. NRG have to react now. They need to do something very fast. It's actually being dragged away here by Immortals. Nice positioning. And already
Good
actually
Lord.
it's going to turn this one. Oh my goodness, it's too much. No, you gotta
Oh,
stop
man.
T-Tigers. This is too much for NRG to handle. That bad mojo, AJ, just executed all three of them on the spot. That was disgusting. Immortals are going to take the Kraken. And this just might be over by the 19-minute mark.
There are two options, right? If you're NRG, you can either kite or you can like jump on T-Tigers there. And what they did was they tried to have a poke war against them. Yeah, fine, you got Samuel Kestrel, but also T-Tigers has 3 items. And he's just going to out-poke you. He's got good sustain on top of everything else. It was a time to be decisive from NRG, and they simply weren't. They needed to, if they wanted to contest Kraken, commit. If they didn't want to contest Kraken, they could have just tried to poke it down, have a bit of an attrition battle in their base, maybe try to get a turnaround whilst the enemy team's focusing on the turret. That was one option. The other option was, all right, let's see what happens. Let's throw something against the wall and see what sticks. They kind of went for the middle ground, and you can't afford to do that there. Immortals now pushing into the base with Kraken. 3 members very healthy and plenty of items and infusions. NRG, this is their last opportunity. This could easily be Game Jaws.
But I'll tell you what will stick. That Kraken's damage to those turrets is just marching on down. NRG have got the poke. Can they make it work? That's the question. They're going to go straight on ham into Lightning T. And Blast Drum is going to silence one. One-hand Anders takes an 800 damage. Mojo to the face. And T-Tigers is already going to be able to secure a kill. Bradley is going to go down next as well. Immortals are going to take game number 1. Lightning T rushes back to base. Immortals looking to dive him. But that Kraken is knocking at their doors. And NRG are going to lose this first game in this best of 3, and Immortals look absolutely unstoppable.
They really do. I mean, they had like that one moment early into the game where I believe D'Enzio got picked up taking kind of poor pathing back to the lane, but aside from that, they didn't falter at any point, and they continued, as I said, to adapt throughout the game to the new things that NRG had to offer as their composition kind of grew through the game as well. So Immortals, look at them next game. If they get a strong draft like this with some good crowd control, pretty scared for NRG.
I'm already quite scared for them. We'll see what the analysts have to say. I mean, there's not too much of a game to break down. Immortals kind of crushed, but can NRG come back? We'll find out in a minute. You guys on the desk can take it away.
Well, I was a little bit worried that we were overhyping Immortals coming into this tournament, but the way that they dismantled NRG in this first game makes me think that maybe we were pretty accurate on this one. Immortals look nigh on flawless in that game.
Yeah, that was absolutely incredible. Not quite flawless, as D'Enzio
As I say, nigh on.
had to go ahead and ruin that for them, but a really, really strong showing for this team. This is what we expect from Immortals, so not really any surprises. It's just business as usual for them, it feels.
I mean, Dragon Ball, what was it that got Immortals rolling like this? Because beyond that first kill, nothing went wrong for them.
Oh, incredible synergy here. This is a great example of this team fight starting when you'd see T-Tigers put the Ordain down, and all of a sudden, all of the abilities, all the ultimates coming out. We saw the Blast Tremors, the Wait For, they all got paired together in perfect harmony. That's something that you just takes a lot of time to practice, and when it's effective, it's just decimating. Right here, you can see it. The Blast Tremor finishes it off. They did block it, but there's so much damage being stacked on top with the Fear, with the Tremor, and with the Vox dealing the Resonance. That it just was too much to handle, and we saw almost in every single fight, we did see Immortals would pair up all of their abilities perfectly.
Yeah, and it's just like that pure lockdown for that amount of time. And then
it was massive.
I mean, the final fight where they are starting Kraken and then they just like turn around and just jump on them, that was the highlight of the entire game for me. I can't wait to see that replay. Well, I mean, Bacon, talk me through a couple of these fights.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was just all about just going in as a team. The moment they make the decision to go in, everyone is fully committed to the fight. There's no hesitation. There's no one person trying to move around to get to a crazy flank while the rest of the team are fighting. Nothing of the sort. It was just once Ordained went down, every single member rushed in and put down as much crowd control as they could. Target focus was on point. It was just really, again, all around incredibly well played game.
This is that moment where, once again, all 3 ultimates go on through just obliterate them.
Look at all the blocks that happen here. I mean, you cannot fault NRG for trying their best. They utilized the Crucible as best they could, but when you've got that much, abilities hitting you, this damage locked to all of those, it's just really too much to handle.
Yeah, you can block the crowd control all you want, but you just can't block all of that damage.
Yeah.
And it was, that was just GG right there. It had been essentially game over for some time before then, but that solidified it.
And I think those fights really kind of prove a point that you need to spread out against that kind of composition. You can't afford to all three be hit by all of the ultimates. You have to spread out so that that combo cannot be effective. It's time to move into the next draft, okay? Time to get on into game 2. What is the expectation? Because it didn't feel like NRG's draft was bad that game. It didn't feel like Immortals came in with this huge draft advantage, but once we got into the game, the advantage seemed to just grow itself.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It wasn't a bad draft from NRG. It was just Immortals being that dominant. I mean, this is something that we've seen, in TSM games, in Cloud9 games. When they face anyone other than each other, you just sort of expect it to go their way, regardless of what the draft is. So obviously, I expect Immortals to have another very solid draft. They come into these drafts with a very clear identity, a very clear idea of what they want to do. And it's so difficult to put them on anything that would be uncomfortable for them because of, again, really deep hero pools.
So what does the plan need to be for NRG coming in here? Is there a way that you can try and halt some of this momentum?
Well, you definitely would love to get a power pick, but on B side, that's going to be tough right out the gate. I think that with the Lyra ban here first, you're really in a tough position now. You're going to ban Grace, Baron's up. Dienzio's Baron performance has been unstoppable in the Challenger Series. He is undefeated. He's going to go with Vox, which I actually really kind of surprised by this. And I think this is Immortals maybe being a little bit tongue-in-cheek here, saying we can play anything, we can win with anything. And NRG doesn't take Baron here, though. This does now put them in an awkward position.
Yeah, especially because they're taking the Vox, allowing NRG to pick up Baron and then ban away the Idris. So that's another very big counter, although I don't even know if the Idris ban comes through. They're going to go for KESTREL, so all of a sudden Baron having a little bit less priority, and again, going to be in a situation where now Immortals, are they going to go ahead and ban it away this time around?
I think they are.
My question is that actually the correct decision not to pick Baron there, or is this Immortals playing mind games with NRG and NRG being like, okay, they've got a counter pick, we don't want to do this?
I think it is a little bit of a mind trick here, because they spooked NRG thinking like with just the Vox pick, you don't see enough of the draft to know that if there's got something in store for the Baron coming out of the jungle here. But the fact that Immortals is taking a lot of time on here is now interesting, because now they might actually be deciding, or they didn't first pick Baron, maybe we don't need to ban it.
But at the same time, it puts, actually, this is a really smart drafting from NRG, because it put Immortals into this spot where they had to choose, do they leave the Baron up or do they ban it? If they leave it up, NRG does not have to pick it here, because Baron is, there's chances of it being Baron and Vox on the same team are so minute that I don't think they really need to worry about it. So NRG can pick their captain here and then force Immortals to have to either pick a counter to Baron or deal with a Baron as that final pick. So I am very impressed with this draft from NRG coming through.
Yeah, really solid stuff coming out from NRG here. I'm curious to see what captain they do pick up if it is that. In fact, going for a Baptiste because it's flexible. The KESTREL also flexible. Both of these picks can be maneuvered around in the draft. Look at this full-out aggression from Immortals. Not a moment of hesitation.
Yeah, this is a composition that Immortals have run quite a few times. Koshka Fortress. I've been wanting to see Fortress played more frequently for some time now. The current meta is all about aggression, getting in, doing tons of damage up front, and Fortress just enables you to do that so incredibly well, especially with a Koshka. They need to get something on the side of NRG that can deal with early aggression, and do they go for the captain? Do they go for a jungle or a laner? They have so much flexibility with the rest of their draft that they've got themselves set up to try and counter this. It's just going to be a matter of, can they actually do it?
All right, so what is the final pick here? It's about to be locked in, Dragonborn, but Sky, what are your thoughts on the Sky pick?
Well, they're really trying to focus on the jungle invasion and to be in a position where they can outmaneuver it. Baron early is going to be a little bit slow and a little bit of a sitting duck, and so I think the decision ultimately to forgo Baron completely was just they don't want to be put in a position where they get snowballed too hard by that Koshka. Sky has had a lot of success going into Immortals, actually going into that Koshka specifically. So I'm actually I'm on the fence here. I'd like to say I'd love what NRG's doing, but I haven't seen how that Sky Kestrel combo is going to work with them. And if they could pair it up well, Koshka is actually the lowest win rate hero for T-Tigers. It's because I think a lot of these teams have figured it out a little bit, but when they get rolling, we haven't seen it paired up with the Fortress, and when they get rolling, there's really not much that can stop Immortals.
So an interesting thing about this draft from NRG, these are comfort picks for them. Lightning T is a very good Sky player. Juan Hernandez, really good on this Kestrel. So I feel like they just kind of took a step back and said, you know what? We're not going to be able to flat out draft Immortals. Let's just get what we feel we are personally best on and try and beat them in the gameplay just by having these comfort picks. So I like the idea that they've gone for there.
It's like instead of playing Immortals games and trying to beat them at it, let's play our own game, play to our strengths. We'll see if it's going to work out for them. Immortals currently 1-0 up, and NRG looking to even the score. Hashtag Vainglory8 is how you can get in touch on Twitter. Let us know who you're looking to win this one. But with that, it's time to head on into Game 2 and on to the Halcyon Fold.
Thanks, guys. My name is George, joined by AJ once again. NRG going more comfort pick orientated this time. Shaking off that last defeat, but Immortals coming in pretty strong. Dienzio's got his Vox once more, but T-Tigers on that Koshka.
Yeah, I mean, this composition from Immortals, so we got to talk about it, because it is all-out aggression, as we mentioned on the desk. It is, I think, going to be very much about whether NRG can keep their cool, and after last game, after suffering such a brutal defeat, that might be kind of difficult. That being said, Bradley, he's got some cojones here, going very aggressive early on.
I was going to say, speaking of being brutal, that's exactly what Bradley's doing. Does use those boots actually to get a little bit of distance on T-Tigers. Green actually had to pop a potion there, I believe, in order to stay alive. Now T-Tigers just whizzing through his jungle.
Yeah, I like the fact that NRG is being very aggressive here. T-Tigers does need to be careful, as he has been.
Yes, he does.
flanked.
He's going to leap on Bradley, though, and Max Green is on here to the side. Juan Hernandez decided, as soon as I hit level 2, I'm going to play T-Tigers at his own game and just invade him. But they are just going to back off. And T-Tigers actually just going to go back to base and pick up an extra crystal bit.
Yeah, I mean, this might end up fine for T-Tigers. The thing you got to remember is that going back here, yeah, sure, you're losing pressure on the map, but you're also getting to buy a little bit faster. You're already level 2. So you're not falling that far behind in levels, and you've got an additional crystal bit on your opponent, now that there's no jungle shop up until 4 minutes. If T-Tigers wants to fight early, he might even be able to turn this into an advantage, but we'll see what happens, because I definitely think for the time being, it's difficult for Immortals to find that window. They don't have, a lot of the abilities that they need to really commit to a fight just yet.
I mean, Immortals, that's exactly what they did last game, though, AJ. They committed to fights over and over and over again, just isolated Bradley or Lightning T. No, not Lightning T, because he was just left alone. They didn't want anything to do with him. They isolated Juan Hernandez and Bradley time and time again, took them out of the fight cleanly, and then it was just easy for Dienzio to back them up in that regard. Bradley actually getting jumped on here. Immortals once more try and go for this aggressive play in the lane. But with Juan Hernandez actually rotating down now from the base, they are going to have to just stay on their aggression just for the moment.
NRG's kind of conceded some of the advantage that they had accrued for themselves earlier on by not really having great pressure in the middle of the map for a little while. I get that they needed to shop. Part of the reason why is, what I mentioned earlier on. But at the same time, giving away that middle treant is not great, obviously, because now Immortals knows that they don't need to fight in the middle of the map if they don't want to. There's nothing that NRG can leverage there to make them feel like they have to. And they've now got the ability to just back up, take the rest of their camps, and kind of equalize. So that was actually a really nice rotation from Immortals, but also perhaps a little poorly timed from NRG. I think an argument could be made that only Juan needed to back up, and they maybe Lightning T rotates down once they realize what's going on. They just kind of try and burst him out or maybe steal away the camp.
Exactly what T-Tigers wants to do. Creeping around in the bushes, but we'll get spotted out with that scout trap. It's always depressing, especially as casters, AJ, because we know where the traps are. We know where those scout traps are hiding, and you just see him trigger it ever so slightly. And if he was a couple of pixels down, he wouldn't have triggered it, and he wouldn't have been seen. But he knows that now, and we knew that beforehand. It's kind of sad, but hey, that's just how it goes. The nature of the beast.
Happens.
Speaking of beasts, Max Green, as soon as he hits that level 6 mark, you can imagine they're going to go all-out aggression. But at the moment, playing rather passive on this Fortress captain.
Yeah, I don't mind this, though, as I said, because you got to remember as well, you're playing into a Baptiste. Even though he's captain, he can be very devastating to deal with early on here. Plus, Juan Hernandez, after he gets his first item, is going to be really, really scary. And you can't always guarantee that when you pick a fight, it's going to be before he goes and buys. Because right now he's pretty close. I'm assuming he might go for like a Frostburn. He's going to have that in 400 gold. If he had been in the jungle rather than the lane, he'd have it by now, based on this rotation probably. So yeah, Immortals, there's this thing you can do in higher levels of play, especially where you kind of conceal how far through your item progression you are. And it makes it really difficult for the aggressive team to go in when they know you're on the brink and you could have access to something that they can't do.
Could have. It's like the mystery card up the magician's sleeve.
Precisely.
Who is a bit of a magician. It's T-Tigers in the jungle. Don't know how he does it. He's going to jump on someone. Yummy Candy Frenzy straight on the backline. Lightning T gets caught up. Dienzio with the follow-up damage. The fountain does come out for the heal, and that's a definite rub from Juan Hernandez. Max Green has to exit down into that bottom mustache brush, and that could have been very explosive. Lightning T could have gone down there, but clutch comes in Bradley with that fountain.
That death from above was absolutely disgusting. Really, really solid stuff there from Juan Hernandez. He actually made a smart path there. He was like, all right, I'm 6 now. I guess maybe their jungler's 6, right? So instead of going to the shop, picking up Frostburn, and then wanting to fight, he went straight to the lane, knowing that this is a window where Immortals had a huge power spike. And it was really good that he did. Had he not shown up, 1 kill for sure, maybe even 2, and definitely a lot of pressure on the turret as well, if not a rotation down to, for example, steal away some camps. So, yeah, sometimes you need to take the selfless path, and that's exactly what Juan Hernandez did there. He's like, my item is not as important as just making sure, like, even if I go to lane, there's no one there, right? I've still made the right decision because there could have been, and you just don't know.
I can just imagine him right now going, please, guys, I just want it back. I want to get my item, please. And they're like, no, we're going to stay because they're going to jump on us right now. Lightning T saw it coming. They did manage to avert the crisis for the moment. But now Juan Hernandez, he's level 7. He's pretty beefy on this Sky. Like you said, has picked up that Frost Burn. But what are Immortals going to do? Because Max Green isn't level 6 either yet. That's going to be their big engage tool. That attack of the pack is going to be crucial for Immortals to actually go for this engage. Speaking of engagement, straight onto Lightning T again. Death from above onto 2 people. It's going to stun him up. That was perfect from NRG. They trade 2 for 1. Dienzio, the last member alive. Bradley's just hacking him away with that scythe, but very, very low. He went, and off the board he goes. Juan Hernandez picks up that kill, and that's an ace for NRG.
If you can play it as good as Juan Hernandez, and you're in solo queue, pick up Sky when you're against Koshka. Because so long as you're not the main target, and if you're the jungler, I mean, there's a decent chance you won't be, about 50-50, you can just shut that down, right? Like, everyone needs to pile onto the target that you've locked on, especially if it's like a Fortress who's captain, right? Someone melee. And you can really just punish that kind of play with Death from Above. It does more damage than people realize, because most of the time, people don't sit in it, right? Like, it's pretty easy to just walk away from. I know that I'm just bad with it, so quite frequently I don't place it very well. But
I'm glad you admitted it, AJ. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, you got to know what your weaknesses are if you want to improve, right? But I think that in the case of Juan Hernandez, they've been on point every single time. He's been saving them instead of like jumping the gun. It's very difficult for Immortals to deal with. There's no good answer. Like, Crucible is not a good answer to Death from Above. It only stops a bit of it.
That's not what they want. They want the whole Death from Above completely stopped, but that does involve actually erasing a Juan Hernandez from this game. Maybe they need to choose their targets a little bit more carefully then. That Yummy Canted Frenzy could land straight on the Sky, and then they make their move from there. Speaking about making moves, though, Juan Hernandez is onto the side. Immortals look like they want to go for him now. Max Green very low. Death from Above comes out, so does Attack of the Pack. Fountain not blown from Max Green just yet. That 4 to 5 health was enough for him to make it out alive. Although he is oozing green liquid, that always looks so strange on that skin.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so hang on. Let's refocus on some of the bigger picture here, because I do think it's worth noting. Immortals, they're the early game team, right? But they're falling behind right now. And part of the reason is that picking Koshka into a Batiste and a Sky can be challenging, but part of the reason is that they're not really leveraging the right opportunities to fight. Here would be a good example of one. Death from Above was just burned. Like, that's a good window to go in. Your opponents are taking gold mine, that's a good window to go in. But Dienzo had his focus set on getting farm in the back of the jungle. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world. You know, you want him to be strong and have farm, but you also do need to capitalize on the opportunities presented to you, and that was definitely one. So Immortals, I think they weren't maybe expecting to run into so much resistance in the early game and be shut down so comprehensively. It's one thing to sort of theory craft it and be like, yeah, I mean, Batiste's good into Koshka, but how good can he be? Or same thing with Sky. In practice, it's just annihilating their engage attempts, though. They really need to look for creative opportunities, not just the obvious ones that you will have practiced game after game after game for your rotations, like, oh, I'm going to go to lane and initiate.
Well, let's harken back to actually what we talked about at the start of this game, in the fact that Immortals, yes, they've been playing also aggressive, but the comfort picks that NRG have actually picked up here, they're actually working out a storm now, and Immortals looking nowhere near as dominant in his last game, completely turning the tables. And if you covered up the nameplates, I think we'd say that NRG were looking like Immortals right now, and Immortals were looking like NRG, just going on the scoreline and where the game is at a whole right now. And NRG really coming back into this.
Even looking at the way they're playing, though, that's kind of the point I'm making, because Immortals are not... They did something great last game, which was they adapted to the sort of peaks and troughs that NRG's composition had and that their composition had. They're playing around things very smartly, including positioning. This game, I feel like they've got a very one-track mind going on right now. Like, they're just saying, all right, we're just going to pile on top of people. That's how Koshka Fortress works. And that's not how it needs to work here. Right? As I said before. NRG, on the other hand, they're like, in the early game, well, okay, like, what are you going to do against Batiste? So we're going to invade. Even though you're against Koshka Fortress, and that might scare some people. And then in the mid-game, they're like, all right, well, they have Koshka, so let's just keep Juan Hernandez near the team. They're doing what Immortals did last game, and actually playing very, very smart so far.
Oof, playing very smart, playing very aggressive. Immortals just halted up by that Death from Above. Fierce from Shade did come out from Bradley as well, but didn't have too much of an effect. Matt Screen also popped the attack of the pack. Here comes the one-shot one kill. It is going to find DNZO. Now NRG looking for advantages here in terms of just kills or getting a lot of damage onto Immortals, which they're doing very well. Pushing forward for Barrage, chunking out Max Green. NRG still wants some of this. T-Tiger's on the side. Ooh. It's going to find Lightning T, and Lightning T just solo zoom out completely. He's going to be matched with the Crystal Sentry, but look up there. Max Green does get ordained. And here comes Juan Hernandez just gunning and running down Immortals, but I think he stepped a little bit too far. Has to hop on that speed bike and run away.
That was a really interesting series of events. To begin with, it was a very decent engage from Immortals. They actually split better, so that it was kind of tough for Juan to make a decision about where to go for Death from Above. So that was good. Then Juan actually threw out kind of a weird Death from Above. It cut people off, but it didn't actually threaten to interrupt like a hard engage, which I'm actually surprised Immortals did not go for. The chase was well played. I'm surprised Dienzio stuck around in the bush for so long, knowing that Bradley had the opportunity to buy a flare. As soon as a flare comes out, he's going to flare that bush. Juan, if he finds a basic attack, can use Surrey Strike to get into the fray. So you have to think about where you're standing. You need to be a bit further back just in case that comes out and you're not expecting it. Then the chase happens, and that would have been an ace, but Juan Hernandez, I think, like, out-mind gamed himself. He thought that Dienzio was going to, like, run away over the wall. So he actually Surrey Striked on the spot, which, arguable whether that's good or not. I mean, it stops you from getting too far out of position where your team can't help you. But he used forward barrage in the wrong direction. He has a bunch of cooldowns that he now can't follow with. Sure, NRG get a kill, but they overchase. It was pretty messy from both sides. But overall, I think we saw moments where both teams looked like they'd figured something out. But they just didn't necessarily execute, or they weren't necessarily all on the same page.
Well, NRG going for this gold miner now, just like he wants to get stolen. Fearsome Shade's actually going to come out and actually secure that for NRG. Nice use of the ultimate there by Bradley. Not something we actually usually see. Make sure everybody's feared up and Immortals cannot secure that gold miner. That was an extra 200 and something gold to all of NRG. Fountain pop there from Bradley. Not sure what that was about. They're going to jump on this one, though. Lightning T on the back line. DNTO underneath the turret. Does pick up the kill. One hand is going to get jumped on in the jungle, though. T-Tigers has found him in that brush, but Immortals pick up their second one. Bradley ends up falling underneath the turret again. Immortals not afraid yet. They're going to secure this turret, and they're evening up this gold lead as well. Only 2,000 separate the teams now.
Man, NRG, I'm frustrated after watching that a little bit because they had been playing so smartly as a team up until that point, but splitting like that is just never going to be a good plan against what Immortals has to offer until maybe you're like 20 plus minutes into the game and you're very strong individually and you can just kite and maybe get away bruised as opposed to dead. If they just stuck together, I mean, what were they really at risk of losing? You know, you scale better. You have the opportunity to just kill people whenever Immortals tries to go for a fight, and they have to because they're kind of an earlier game team. Yeah, I think that was a bit of an oversight from NRG. Juan Hernandez got distracted and decided he wanted to go farm the jungle. Now Immortals even things up a little bit when it comes to the gold. They have an opportunity to start bringing the game back.
I mean, comfort picks are working out for them thus far. So that game is still in NRG's playbook, or at least their favor, I should say. Now Bradley, he's not hit. As a Captain Batiste, you won't hit too many power spikes, but that Crucible is going to be very important. And we've seen the early adaptation of the War Treads come through from most captains. Max Green, however, has only got those tier 1 boots. He's actually prioritized a lot of armor instead, just not relying on that extra speed up to get his team into the engagement, rather just his ultimate. And now NRG, they are pushed back here with Immortals, maybe looking for a little something. DNTO is going to get flared out. Nice use of vision from both teams just thus far, you have to say.
Yeah, Frostburn is pretty good, especially when you have a lot of crystal power to amplify the slow. See, Dienzio took half of his health, and it wasn't as if Immortals could have been like, oh no, Dienzio's in threat, let's go. Because if they try, the same kind of fight's going to happen that did earlier on. Immortals can't, I mean, I don't envy them at all, actually. You know, they need to really figure out creative ways of getting into these initiations, and NRG, they're back to their old habit of just sticking together and playing smart, playing safe.
Well, Ordain onto Max Green. T-Tiger is going to take that Q and jump in. Here comes Attack of the Pack. Juan Hernandez has to get out of there. Very sharpish. Those boots were popped. Has to run away. Immortals now on the back foot as well. One shot, one kill. Max Green is literally just going to walk into it. Whoops-a-daisy. Don't think that was going to hit T-Tigers, but better safe than sorry. And again, no kills go either way. And now it is NRG. It's up to them now. What are they going to do with this next? Actually, I'll tell you right now, AJ, they're going to start the Kraken.
Yeah, I like this. I mean, this is definitely something that can really break the game open and make it a convincing lead instead of kind of a back-and-forth one. But I think the way that you use this Kraken is important, right? They should probably leverage it for a team fight rather than committing to it. And what they actually did is backing away, which is fine too. I mean, it certainly forced Immortals to, for example, forgo their back farm, so their rotation is a little out of whack. You know, there's things that just pushing for a Kraken does for your team, and I think this was a couple of good ones here. NRG, at some point you have to win, though, so they need to start pushing on the gas. I think it's hit a point where they can.
Right. NRG want round 2. It's exactly the same setup from Immortals with T-Tigers up in that bush. They gotta know. They gotta know, AJ. They can't have that happen to them again. They're actually just going to retreat here and actually get a little bit more vision down. Bradley's going to pop to the shop, pick up a couple of flares. Immortals, though, pushing that lane in. You can see they have dominant control over that lane. It will push towards NRG's turret now. And that's one more turret as well for NRG to lose, and their base will be clean open for Immortals to take. Now we're in that lull period. No one wants to die because that Kraken is a very real threat. If anybody oversteps, that will be the fight going either one way or the other.
It gets higher and higher stakes as we go on, too, as those death timers grow. You know that it's going to be really bad if anyone dies. So both teams are actually sticking together a lot. Immortals, I like that they're able to exert so much pressure here onto NRG. They're clearly doing something right, but at the same time, I really don't think NRG should be letting Immortals push them around when it comes to their rotations like this. Just get some good vision down. When you see Immortals out of position a little bit or pushing too far forwards, you can commit to a fight. It's not as if you don't have the tools to just win something straight up. Right now, though, look at this. Immortals, they're going for Kraken. NRG not having vision is really about to bite them if they don't get here quickly.
Oh man, I just praised them for the vision. Now they do this to me. Bradley's going to come in with the Ordained, and look where Lightning T is. He's all the way back near his base, near that Crystal Sentry. Oh, that almost got sniped away. That one shot, my heart leapt there. That one shot, one kill was so close, but Dienzio finishes it off with a basic attack, and that will be the Kraken going over to Immortal.
I can just imagine the Immortals voice comms. Guys, just let it land so we can kill it quicker. Right? Like, nah, but in all seriousness, that was pretty dicey. Immortals, I think they had a moment of panic where Dienzio jumped into the wall of the Ordained just at the last second, still got stunned. They were like, oh no, we done messed up. But it ended up working out. Now Immortals has Kraken. NRG, I feel kind of heartbroken right now. They had such a strong early game, but they just have not kept the pressure on. They haven't utilized their lead. Now Immortals, they're pushing in. This could be devastating for NRG.
Immortals with the pressure game now. T-Tiger's waiting to pounce on in. That Kraken's going to destroy the turret. There goes Max Green. Half HP. He's chunked. Lightning T in the front line now. Dienzio going fairly low. Yummy Candy Frenzy's going to be blocked. Wait for it. It's going to silence 3 members of NRG. They're going to have to retreat to base. The Fountain is going to heal them up nice and steadily. Now that Kraken's still marching on. That's another turret destroyed. Dienzio going fairly low. T-Tiger's completely ignored. Max Green, Dienzio, they're all split up. Immortals not looking so immortal right now as they just get cut down. T-Tiger's falls. That will be Dienzio falling too, but that Kraken is going to secure 3 turrets for them, AJ. That is worth in my books.
Yeah, I was trying to sort of like think about whether that was worth it or not as it was happening. They really did commit to it, though, and I like that regardless of whether or not it was the right call or not. They just decided to do it and did instead of kind of being back and forth. They didn't get aced. That's huge because the minion wave won't actually push properly to actually counter push whilst people are dead on Immortal's side. So it makes sense for one person to leave. Dienzio did his job. He didn't get greedy and try and pick someone up or try and help on the turret. It was a decent play, and now Immortals don't have a lot of work to do. If they ever make it into the base again, they are right there. They have the opportunity to close things out. NRG, though, they got to step up, Jaws. This is really do or die in this series, at least. And again, every series you win counts towards whether or not you're going to the Vainglory8 next season. It's critical.
Man, that's the best thing about this format right now. Every team from the VG8 in that challenge battle spot gets to play against Immortals. They get to play against Row. They get to play against Tri. This is do or die time for some of these teams. And NRG crumbling right now, but we got to say Immortals, they are looking absolutely dominating. The gold doesn't speak it, the kills don't speak it, but their late game macro play and even micro play is just absolutely on point right now. Let's have a look at the state of the game, though. I mean, NRG right now, they're trying to secure vision, but Immortals just pushing in this lane. It's just one more fight now and Immortals victory.
You hit the nail on the head when you said macro play, Jaws, because it's not something where, like, the draft was necessarily that good. I think, to be honest, it wasn't that good from Immortals. It wasn't something where their early game and their rotations were that great early on in the mid game, because they weren't. They got punished for a lot of overextending. But in the late game, they know what to do to sort of attrition out their opponents and slowly build a lead. Whereas some teams, without the experience of someone like Dienzio and T-Tigers on it, who are world-class players who've been around the block a couple of times, don't know how to play that kind of game. They only know how to get a lead and then win with.
Oh, hang on a second, AJ. War Treads, attack of the pack, Lightning T rushing after them. Immortals just going for the base race here. I think they got this. NRG have just let this one slip through their hands. Immortals take the series 2-0, and that'll be NRG looking a very sorry state after day number 1.
Oh, that's brutal for NRG, but they have got more games coming up. This is not the end of the road for them, unlike in the previous Challenger format. I think Immortals, every team who has still yet to face them, really needs to take note of how they play. At the same time, NRG, tighten up heading into your next games. Bradley, get your fountains on point. There's so many things they got to work on if they want to stay in the Vainglory8.
And we'll see if they can do that in the days to come. But that series was an absolute domination from Immortals. Munch, you guys can take it away on the desk now.